This next moment, I think, sets the stage for everything that's going to happen in this country moving forward. And that is what happened the day that we left Afghanistan. Now, once again, what makes the dollar world reserve? Oh yeah, it's the protection of the Saudi kingdom. What happened the day after we left Afghanistan? Russia and Saudi Arabia announced a joint military cooperation agreement. What? Are you kidding me? What? Russia is now protecting Saudi Arabia? And the day after that, guess who did it again? Nigeria makes the same announcement that Nigeria and Russia are now Russia is protecting Nigeria through a joint military cooperation agreement. They're maybe the fifth or sixth largest OPEC producing country, and we know what Saudi Arabia is. Subsequently, we've already seen that Nigeria is selling their oil to China right now for yuan-denominated bond that is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It's called the Petro-Yuan bond. And because it is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, this is how countries like Iran sidestep our sanctions. They'll sell their oil to the Chinese in a Petro-Yuan bond, and they can immediately convert it to gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange into kilo bars and take possession of it. This is why the Shanghai Gold Exchange has delivered close to 100 times more gold than we have, the COMEX, which sets the price, because these countries are doing just that. And guess who else is doing it? Saudi Arabia. So you have the linchpin of the dollar hegemony, the Saudis, and now Nigeria, two of the 13 OPEC member countries, selling their oil already to China, both being protected by Russia. Nigeria, part of the Belt Road Initiative, being protected by China. They're selling their oil in something other than dollars. This is a huge deal. Of course, we're not talking about it, but it is a massive deal. A lot of these pieces, I think, have been in play for a very long time, evidently. And even when you talk about some of the things that you saw in the past, you can add them to a progression of events where, they take a long time to play out. But I do think as we see what's happening here in 2022, it is speeding up. And as the world reserve currency, if you weaponize it the way we did against Russia, you are asking for trouble. And I think the question that I pose to people, and now I'm going to take a step off this for a moment, and I'm going to ask you to think about this. Was it intended or was it unintended? What I mean by that are the consequences intended or unintended. Why do I say that? I say that because our Fed chairman, Powell, I believe has no intention of being written about in history books as blowing up the American dream. Because in the last 3 years, more money has been created in the last 3 years than in the entire history of the country before. The majority of that money that has been created, or a good portion of it, went into assets where hedge funds can borrow $1 billion at 1%, plow it into equities, plow it into real estate, plow it into cryptocurrencies, make a fortune, pay off the loan with no problem at all, make huge bonuses. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is a massive distortion in asset prices. You could call this the crack-up boom in Austrian economics, where massive expansion in credit and lowered interest rates create distortions and misallocations of capital and resources where price discovery is next to impossible. Houses are doubling or tripling in a year. Equity portfolios the same. Cryptocurrencies up 10 times. And that's not how markets work. They don't go parabolic like this. And I think a lot of it has to do with the distortions and the misallocations that were created through massive money printing. So I think Fed Chairman Powell has no intention of blowing up the system and getting tough on inflation. The National Bureau of Economic Research came out with a report not too long ago and said that the 9.1% inflation that was listed in July of this year would have been 16.5% if calculated it the way that they used to in 1980. John Williams of Shadow Stats, a legend in this industry, all he does is show the numbers the way that the Fed and the Bureau of Labor Statistics used to calculate numbers. But even if we believe the 9%, by the way, that CPI excludes food, energy, and housing, right? So they pulled out the things that we need that are inflating to give us this now 8.5%. So he says he's getting tough on inflation and raising it to what getting tough on inflation is what Paul Volcker did under the same situation, only when they calculated inflation truthfully.
Right.
Inflation at 16 or 17%. What did he do? He raised the federal funds rate to 19.75%, blew up the economy and blew up inflation. And so I don't think that he's going to do it. He's not going to get tough on inflation, but how about we create a villain? Because, our president is already telling us that inflation has nothing to do with historic money creation and everything to do with Putin, right? Well, inflation is always 100% of the time a monetary event, always. And when you throw in unproductivity in the equation, it exacerbates the effects of inflation. And that sounds like the last 3 years. Massive money creation, paying everyone to sit on their couch, play video games, and eat bonbons. So you have more money chasing less stuff because no one's producing anything. They're sitting on their couch. So that's the cause of inflation. It has nothing to do with Putin. It has everything to do with the Federal Reserve that has blown up, and a government that has blown up our money supply and incentivized people to be unproductive. There's your inflation. What's happened so far in 2022? It'll blow you away. First of all, as I mentioned, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia are selling their oil to China for the yuan-denominated petro-yuan bond, which is immediately convertible into gold. At the Shanghai Gold Exchange. You have the Russian-Iran-India corridor that just came out. This is linking Northwest Russia to the Persian Gulf via the Caspian Sea and Iran. Everyone else has to go all the way around, but the countries who are in the group get to cut through, right? You have Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia announce that they are contemplating joining the BRICS nations. Now, if you say publicly you're contemplating, it's a done deal. These countries are moving away from the Western alliances and they are joining the BRICS. And Saudi Arabia. Did I mention Saudi Arabia? Yes, Saudi Arabia is joining the BRICS nations. You had Turkey come out and say they want to ditch the dollar for payments in Russian energy. And they've purchased 75 tons more gold in the first 7 months of the year than any central bank on the planet. They are the largest accumulators of gold. Turkey, who's just said they're going to join the BRICS nations and wants to ditch the dollar for Russian energy, they are leading the way in 2022 on gold purchases. So as I mentioned, China's dumped 100 billion in bonds plus in the last 7 months. You have now 147 countries on the Belt Road, including all of the 13 OPEC countries. All of them are on the Belt Road Initiative. 6 of the 13 BRICS nations, or 6 of the 13 OPEC countries have already joined BRICS or are in process of joining. The 7th, United Arab Emirates, just joined the BRICS Bank. And now you have Russia and China standing arm in arm on a stage a month ago saying they are announcing a new world reserve currency. At the same time, you have gold leaving the COMEX market at the fastest monthly rate ever. You have silver, on the other hand, being massively drawn down through the London Metals Exchange to the smallest amount ever in recorded, ever since they had started keeping track of the amount of silver on the LME. And you have over 100 million ounces of silver taken out of SLV by the authorized participants. So you see massive accumulation of gold and silver off the exchanges taking possession. Why do you own gold and silver? Why? Remember, gold was classified the only tier 1 asset in the world next to US dollars. Remember, the biggest money in the world, the central banks, the commercial banks, the sovereign wealth funds, the family offices, they're all buying it. They're all taking it off the exchanges, removing counterparty risk. You can see the drawdown from all of the major exchanges.